afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. Folks, do you know that today is National Pop Goes the Weasel Day? But my friend likes to call it National Patrick Brown Day. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, what am I supposed to do for National Pop Goes the Weasel Day? Like, what is required of me?
You're supposed to hang around some shady businesses and secret campaign offices and see if Patrick Brown, who, by the way, has an op-ed piece in the National Post today, and Sheila, if you were to read it, this is the worst thing I can say about the sneaky one. The full-time mayor of Brampton, or as you like to call him, the part-time arena/beaver inspector. If you read that op-ed piece, that column he wrote, it could just as easily have been written by Justin Trudeau. You remember that ad when you had a whole bunch of people, I think it was for ABC laundry detergent, and they were going, "Can you tell the difference? I can't tell the difference," or between the bargain brand ABC detergent and the high-priced Tide brand of detergent. This is the opposite of detergent. This is slime, right? It is just amazing, and we do have a little update to announce on the proposed criminal harassment charges that he wanted filed against Lincoln Jay and I for following him into a police station. But we'll get.
You know
to
what?
That.
It's true. Like hold up a picture of Patrick Brown and a picture of Justin Trudeau. Can you please tell me the difference? No, there is no difference. Actually, I think on this issue, Patrick Brown might be a little further to the left than Justin Trudeau, if that's even possible, because Justin Trudeau just wants to censor you. Yeah. Patrick Brown wants to criminalize the act of journalism.
You know what? Great point, Sheila. And it makes a mockery of the fact that he's running for the Conservative Party of Canada. I mean, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, they came to their senses in January 2018, just 6 months before the provincial election, and got this weasel to go to do that walk of shame, that Cersei walk of shame from Game of Thrones, down the back stairs of Queen's Park into that filthy salt-covered minivan. Oh, what an inglorious ending for the man who would be premier. But to think that if he's too left, if he's too wacko-jacko for the Ontario PCs, for the federal Conservative Party, this would be a disaster to have this man. And the only reason we're talking about him, when you have a National Pop Goes the Weasel Day, and by the way, what do you do on National Pop Goes the Weasel Day?
That's what I'm saying. What am I supposed to do?
And I'm not making them up. Folks, if you want to fact check me, please go to the Googler machine and you'll find out that these things actually do exist. But enough about the sneaky one for now. Let's hear from the charming one in terms of what it is we're trying to do, Sheila, with this live stream.
Yes. What is it exactly that we're trying to do? This is the Rebel News Daily live stream. Olivia, can you tell me, are we on all platforms today, or are we just on YouTube and Rumble? Okay, so we're just on YouTube, Rumble, and Super U this morning. We stream on YouTube. However, there may come a time where we have to cut the YouTube feed because it's a censorship platform. There's certain things that we cannot talk about over there. For example, we cannot talk about whether or not we think our public health officer is right, or if we think they're crazy and just making it up as they go. We also cannot talk about election integrity over there, or they will kill our YouTube channel. So our stream. Sorry,
if I may interject, in terms of election integrity, you can't talk about the 2020 U.S. federal election being allegedly rigged or smitten with fraud.
Right.
The 2016 U.S. election.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine.
That's
That's
okay.
stolen. That's fine. It's the same way that if left-wing protesters go into the Capitol buildings,
Yep.
that's a protest. But if right-wing protesters do it, that's an insurgency.
Yeah, and it's always
That's
mostly peaceful, even though the reporters are ducking out of the way of Molotov cocktails.
literally standing in front of a burning building.
Yeah.
But anyway,
What a world.
So yeah, they keep being terrible and I keep having a job. You know what I mean? Anyway, so we start off on YouTube. We may have to cut the feed, but in the event that we do, no worries. If you are watching us on YouTube, why don't you migrate over to one of the other platforms where we stream? We're having a little bit of difficulty connecting to all of them today, but we are on Rumble and Super U as well. And on both of those platforms, you can support the work that we do completely willingly through a paid chat. On Rumble, the paid chat is called a rant. Leave us a paid chat. David or I, probably me, will read it on air and then we'll discuss. And on Super U, it's called a Super U shout. And it's a great way to support the work that we do completely willingly and take the show in whatever direction you want. And I think that's all the loose ends tied up. I want to talk about the big girl who wants to ride a horse and abuse a horse before we get into the everything that we want to talk about today, because there's so much, particularly with the vaccine mandates for air and rail travelers, potentially falling, predicted to fall today. But just for the fun of it, can we throw that article up, please? I just saw this morning and I thought, someone's getting mugged by reality. So this lady, whom I've never seen before, her name is Remy Bader. She's a TikTok star because that's apparently a thing. She's known for her realistic clothing haul videos. Again, apparently that's a thing. She claimed during a recent trip with other influencers, apparently, again, being an influencer is a thing, that a ranch wouldn't allow her to ride their horses due to her weight. And so I guess the implication here is that this is discrimination. But this is where reality meets body positivity and body positivity loses. This is where the rubber meets the road. The horses and their ability to carry your girth, it doesn't matter. Social justice does not affect that. And you don't have a self-esteem right to abuse an equine. But that's basically, people who don't know any better right now on the internet are very upset that the rancher, the owner of this horse, didn't allow this obese, and I use that term medically, woman to get on a horse and harm it. Because usually, like for most riding horses, with the exception of a few breeds like draft horse breeds and bigger horses, it's 20% of their body weight is what they can carry, and that's about 250 pounds. So we know she's more than 250 pounds. So I use the word obese medically here. But yeah, you don't have a right to abuse a horse just because you're in the body positivity movement.
But, Sheila, we have to know the known knowns and the known unknowns here. It's hard to tell from that photo how much she weighs. Honestly,
it's 250 pounds. Plus,
it is. So we do know she's 250.
Well,
in fact, the only thing I can tell.
It has to be because the rancher is not going to say, like he's paid to give you a ride on the horse. He's not going to turn down the money. He's obviously turning down the money from this influencer who took to the internet to cry about it, that, you're not going to get to harm my horse today.
Yeah, the only thing I could tell from that photo is this woman is appropriating Power Girl's costume from the DC universe. And if you don't know who that is, again, go to the Googler machine and you'll find out what I'm talking about exactly. Yeah, it looks like there's a bit of junk in the trunk there now that we have the full meal deal of the photo. So basically, these are people, I presume during the pandemic, Sheila, that were telling us to follow the science. And yet when it comes to following the science, of a obese woman. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. If she's that weight and that height, she is clinically or by definition obese. Well, what do you want to do? You want to hurt the horse. You want to break its back. And by the way, where is PETA on this file? They're so outraged about...
They'll come along and euthanize that horse.
That's right. PETAkillsanimals.org for more on that file. But really, why aren't they making a stink about this in defense of the farmer? Because he is being kind to animals here and being vilified for it.
Yeah, he's literally being vilified for it. She took to her social medias to complain about how she's being discriminated against because this rancher had regular horses and not Clydesdales for her.
Well, thank God it wasn't a Shetland pony we're talking about. Okay, then. So there's a...
Is this her complaining?
Oh, shout out. I thought it was shootout. That might come when Antifa comes a-calling. Who knows?
For making me leave because I weigh over 240 pounds. So this is her admitting that she's clinically obese. And also another consideration in this is that this horse probably has 40 pounds of tack on. So that's everything plus the saddle, usually about 20 to 40 pounds there. So we're going to have a horse lugging around 300 pounds and 240 plus of it is her ample girth. Sorry, but you don't get to abuse a horse because you have self-esteem issues and that you're a body positivity TikToker. Like this is one of those rare instances where besides diabetes, these people get mugged by reality.
And Sheila, that is the conversation to have with this woman. And it's this. Are you really that selfish that you would hurt an animal? Maybe
Apparently.
permanently put it out of command. Yeah.
And she wants to name and shame this rancher for being defensive of his horses.
So, Sheila, I haven't checked out the debate online, but please tell me the majority of people are coming to the defense of the rancher and his protection of his livestock, which is his livelihood. Please tell me the social justice warrior mob isn't on her side in terms of saying, yeah, that horse should have potentially been crippled so that her self-esteem wasn't hurt. Well, how is it playing out?
It's about a 50-50 split.
Oh.
Yeah, people who, I guess to use the words of Ben Shapiro, people who ascribe to the facts don't care about your feelings mantra, they're like, yeah, you can't just hurt a horse. But other people are saying, this is discrimination. It's a horse. It's not like an airline seat. This is a horse. It's a living thing. I naturally believe that like humans are the top of, the animal kingdom, but you can't go around hurting animals unnecessarily. These are the same people who will say, though, out of the other side of their mouth, hunting is animal cruelty. And don't eat meat because that's animal cruelty. And it's like, well, excuse me, you want to flatten a horse?
Unbelievable. I think I'll even reach out to PETA and see if they have a statement on this. Maybe they'll have to be twisted into a pretzel to come up with something.
They'll come and euthanize that horse. They'll show up with the
maybe I better
the
not
death
alert them.
injection. Yeah, don't do that.
But, and I just want to say this about the body positivity movement. And I'm speaking here as a heterosexual male. I don't buy into the whole media-generated perfection of a woman, i.e. the supermodel. To me, those look like the physiques of teenage boys. These women look like they're starving. I want to shove a donut down their mouth. I think most heterosexual males prefer women to be curvy. But having said that, it's all in moderation. If you go all out fat, if you go obese, as Sheila was saying, folks, what are you risking? You're risking diabetes. You're risking heart disease. You're risking so many problems. And by the way, if you're looking at me right now and saying, oh, look at Menzoid, skinny mini lecturing us. No, I'm fat. And the only reason I'm not circus fat is because I get my ricotta cheese candy ass on a bicycle at least 5 or 6 days out of a week. That's why. I don't like it some days. I have to force myself like the last several times. Still, you have to do it. When we cater Sheila, to the lunatic fringe that eat as much as you want, be as sedentary as you want. We are putting them on the route to an early grave, period. Where's the compassion there?
Well, that's where I'm at. Live your life however you want, eat however you want. That's fine. But let's not consider you a health influencer, if you will. Like let's not just because you don't feel bad about yourself, and I don't want people to feel bad about themselves, but also I'm Catholic, so I think shame is a highly effective feeling. It keeps you on the straight and narrow sometimes. But I'm with you that it is a sweet lie to tell people that you're healthy at every size. It's not scientific. It's just, they tell me to follow the science. I'm following the science. It's just not healthy. I'm sorry. It's not, the nicest thing to hear. But it is true. And I come from the side of the equation where I want everybody to feel good and their body to do the thing that they want it to do. That's where I'm at on this. And by telling people that, do whatever you want and eat whatever you want. Again, I don't want to make it illegal, and I don't want warning labels on food. I think I'm pretty clear about that. But I think, to be fair, let's not ignore the science here.
Yeah, I want a warning label on the horse's ass saying that, and I'm talking about the livestock here, folks.
Weight limit.
Yeah, caution, and again, what's with that pseudo Power Girl top? And by the way, if anyone in the studio can conjure up an issue of Power Girl, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because I know that seemed really odd, and the way that photo was cropped, I think, Sheila, it made it seem to me that this was not an overweight person. I think that was deliberate, perhaps.
By design? Yeah, by design.
Yeah, because until you showed me the whole enchilada, so to speak, it looked like this is a person that's had a too few more enchiladas that she should be eating. So.
Yeah, and just so the viewers at home know, every time I see David in person, he tells me to eat more. Every single time.
I tell you what? Sorry?
You tell me to eat more. Every single time I see you, you say, Sheila, you're too thin. Sheila, you're too thin. Every single time I see you, without fail.
You have to admit, you have lost a lot of weight. I
don't think so.
To me, Perfect Sheila was the 2018 edition. It was.
That's rude.
No,
that's rude.
And then you fell in love with a treadmill. And
I've always been in love with the treadmill.
But
I'm falling out of love with you real fast.
And you know what? And I'm telling you, Sheila, just like in moderation with the donuts and the fast food meals, in moderation with the treadmill, because I'm afraid. You're like that movie from the 60s, The Incredible Shrinking Man, although you're a woman, of course. Although maybe you're identifying as a man. It is Pride right now. But in any event, you're just shrinking before my eyes. I'm getting scared.
Speaking of getting scared, we should move away from this topic before Mr. Operations Manager comes in and is like, cut the feed, get the hook.
That's never a good thing when the management glares at me through the glass. I have to go into my Johnny LaRue mode. Oh, please, Mr. Cavallero, oh, please. One more chance.
Let's move into Adam Van Couverden, I think is how you say his name.
Oh, yes.
Because he said some less than kind things to a constituent who is, I think she was sort of stranded away from her family. And so she reached out to her MP, because who else are you supposed to reach out to? And he basically tells her to F off. Not basically, he did. And I'm PG-ifying it. Tells her to F off. And then his response to that is, says F you to Canadian woman criticizing vaccine mandates. Now, he apologizes, but to the world. I don't think he's reached out to this lady directly.
Oh, no.
And then, typical liberal, this is a learning experience for all of us. And apparently, it's been real hard on him, too. The mandates he put in place have been real hard on him. Well, okay. Anyway, let's read this because he tells this lady to go F you. Let's bring it back up because the gall of this guy. He says, last week I let my emotions get the better of me and I responded in an unacceptable way to a direct message and I regret that. I want to apologize to the person I offended with the message and anyone else I've let down. I realize the past 2 years, this is my favorite. I realize the past 2 years have been exceptionally difficult for everyone. And moving forward, I will work to be more patient and conduct myself with the high standard people deserve from their elected representatives. The last 2 years have been difficult because of the rules you people brought in.
Yeah.
So he's complaining that his own pressure cooker that he created is too pressure cookery for him.
Yeah. And
Give
Sheila,
me a break.
for everyone, not for everyone. The bureaucracy never lost a single hour's worth of work. People in government didn't. In fact, in many cases, they voted themselves raises, making a mockery of we're all in this together. But, I will say this, Sheila. I'm going to give him a tip of the hat in terms of actually making an apology, because you might recall that back in the 1970s, Trudeau Classic, as opposed to New Trudeau, Justin, he said the F word in Parliament, and he lied through his teeth, saying what he actually said was fuddle-duddle, a word that
common confusion.
Yeah, I mean, Sheila, until Pierre Trudeau said the words fuddle-duddle, I don't think anyone on the planet ever said the words fuddle-duddle. He coined the word, I think, and he never took it back. He never had the decency. Everyone heard what he had to say. So the fact that he would lie in addition to uttering a profanity in Parliament was doubly egregious in my book. So at least this guy has the sense to realize that's not an appropriate word to use in Parliament.
Well, he didn't use it in Parliament.
On social media. But still, he's a parliamentarian.
Exactly.
And we do expect better, I should think, of the people we elect. And that's why language matters. Because if anyone
the bar
says...
is pretty low. The bar is pretty low.
Oh, yeah.
Between the Liberal MPs walking around naked twice and cursing out their constituents, the bar is pretty low.
But and for those who say, oh, come on, she's never heard the F-bomb, she's never heard this bad word, this profane phrase, etc. No, that's not the point. If you have elected leaders, there should be a benchmark of actually using civil and decent language. You shouldn't
have to pay the guy who's cursing you out.
Exactly. So really that was I think too, Sheila, the fact that you made a good distinction there. I made the mistake of saying he said it in Parliament, but it was on social media. Unlike Pierre Trudeau, who probably had an emotional outburst but still lied about it, this paddler actually went on a keyboard and typed the phrase and pressed send. Yeah, so there were many seconds of, coolant mode, that was ignored, and he still sent it. And also with the realization that, as the cliche goes, the internet is forever. When I press send, it's never going to be erased. Somebody's got a screen capture of it somewhere, maybe in Timbuktu or New Zealand, it doesn't matter. So once it's sent, it's matter of permanent record. I wrote it. It's no misunderstanding between F Classic and fuddle-duddle. And that really speaks to his, his lack of intelligence as a communicator.
For sure. Now, I think we have a clip. Olivia whispers in my ear of, is this from the House of Commons where he's asked about this? Perfect.
Well, the Liberals are in fine form. They made a big announcement on Friday. Did they end mandates allowing people to return to work? Nope. Did they end mandates allowing all Canadians to travel by rail and air? No. Their solution was to pause random COVID testing for a couple of weeks. It was a joke. So will the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Health give us a date on when he'll end the mandates, or will he tell me to F off like he did to one of his constituents?
responded in an unacceptable way to a message on social media, and for that, I deeply regret it. I want to apologize to the person that I offended and anybody else that I let down. I realize that the past 2 years have been really difficult for a lot of people, but my conduct was unacceptable. We have an obligation to disagree while being disagreeable, and in that regard, I failed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think he should apologize for his fashion sense there. So many lines, you know.
I know, it was a lot. I didn't know where to look again. It felt like with that flag we looked at the other day. But, you know, Laura Rosen-Cohen, who writes for Mark Stein Online, she had the best response to this. She said, "Be kind to me. I'm an orphan," says the guy who murdered his parents. And that's exactly what it is here. The last 2 years have been hard on you? Yeah, they're hard on all of us because of the decisions privileged parliamentarians like you made. Yeah, so don't complain that it's hard. You made it hard.
You know, I heard on the sporting scene, this was a very arrogant person, not very well liked. So naturally, the career transition from paddling his kayak to becoming a member of parliament for the Liberal Party of Canada makes perfect sense. He fits right in.
Yeah. Now, in the other big news today, maybe we should move along to the fact that apparently today, it hasn't been officially announced, or at least it wasn't officially announced before we went on air, the vaccine mandates, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
They're set to be announced to be dropped today, to drop tomorrow. It sounds like, and that's for air and rail travelers domestically. Now, you still can't get into the United States as a non-citizen without your vaccine, but this, if it is indeed this way, it's good news. You know, what's shocking though is the Minister of Transport had no idea that this was coming, because our team, you know, the guy has no idea about anything though, like the mayhem unfolding in the airports. He's just like, I don't know. He had no idea that this was coming. I think he was sort of caught flat-footed by this. And our guys, Lincoln Jay and William, who's a new reporter with us, they caught him out on the streets of Ottawa yesterday at a very high dollar Liberal fundraiser. I think it was $1,000 a plate to be a part of this. And it required a vaccine passport to be there, because the Liberals, even if you give them money, they don't want to mix with the unvaccinated because you're dirty. Your money's fine, but you're dirty. And they caught Omar Al-Jabra, the transport goblin, out on the street, and he had no clue what was going on. Why don't we throw to that, please?
Yeah. Rebel News. What do you think of the fact that Canada is the only country with China and North Korea that doesn't allow unvaccinated citizens to travel to Clinton?
How are you?
I'm super good. How about you?
I'm fantastic.
Can you answer my question? When will the travel mandates end for unvaccinated citizens? Does Ontario have a different? Does Ontario have a different science than the federal government? Do you have like different scientists?
Have a good evening.
Do you have different scientists?
Have a good evening.
Are you able to answer one question, sir? You've been elected by the people.
Sir, is there any hope for unvaccinated travelers to board a plane or a train?
Have a good evening.
Is there any hope, sir?
As I said, science is...
But the science changes. Ontario is not the same as the federal. Do you have different scientists?
Have a good evening.
Different scientists?
Sir, is there any hope for unvaccinated travelers anytime soon?
China and North Korea, sir. When will it end? Is it going to be forever? Forever, sir?
My favorite is when William waves to him in the car, like, bye.
No, Sheila, my favorite is the SUV moves like about 3 meters and hits a red light at Spark Street, which, you know,
Quick getaway.
Which is a pedestrian-only road the other way. It's normally a getaway. I want to commend William. He was so unflustered, and given that this was his first time, polite, he was getting non-answers, and instead of...
But he kept asking.
Yeah, and he just kept asking, and even asked, the minister, am I going to get an answer to my questions, which was a perfectly fine question. And I just think that, Omar Al-Gagra look so bad in that clip because he's just saying, have a nice night. How are you? He looked like an imbecile. He is a parliamentarian. He should be able.
Look at the dumb smile on his face.
Oh, yeah. The transport goblin. It really is. He's like a creature out of Lord of the Rings, isn't he? I mean, but you should, as a parliamentarian, for goodness sakes, one of the reasons you're there is that you can communicate. You are a politician. That's what politics is all about, Sheila. And for him to just say, do the Bobby Bittman, hi, how are ya routine for every question, it's brutal. What I'm saying is William and Lincoln Jay, they looked great. He looked terrible. He's literally running away. Well, running away in terms of a O.J. Simpson Bronco slow speed.
Yeah, I know.
Chase, right? But he's running away from giving any tangible response at all. What a disgrace.
Yeah, and I think, people sometimes online, they give me a hard time about my lack of respect for Omar Al-Jabra. But the man is the guy behind the absolute mayhem happening at Toronto Pearson. The transport ministry is the reason why that's happening. A lot of people don't know, but as a cost-saving measure during the pandemic, besides the vaccine firings, as a cost-saving measure, they cut a bunch of security screeners. I think it's like 30% of the security screeners. And so it's absolute chaos there. And, in the rare time when the Liberals try to save money, they even get that wrong. And then 6 million Canadians are being discriminated against on his watch. And all he has is that blank, idiotic look on his face and like a dumb wave out the window. So yeah, I don't respect him. I don't think he's very bright, and he is a goblin.
But you know what, Sheila? I can't get that phrase out of my mouth. I want to go back to something you said earlier. And this might be why he had a blank, idiotic look on his face, because it was coming from a place of honesty. And what I'm getting at is, do you think Omar, the Minister of Transportation, was somehow left out of the loop, that when CBC got tipped off, it was probably by Justin Trudeau himself, the chief sugar daddy for the CBC and the mainstream media, and maybe Trudeau forgot to say, oh, by the way, Omar, just so you know, that might have been genuine shock that he didn't know what to say.
For sure.
You know what it reminds me of? I go back to 2019. We've got it on film. You can go into the archives, folks. When Marco Mendicino was at a synagogue in the Eglinton Lawrence riding, having a debate with the other candidates, and literally during the debate was when the Justin Trudeau blackface story broke, that infamous photo of him at that Arabian Nights gala where he's got blackface. Not only blackface, black hands too. He really went.
Black hands, black neck, everything.
And I went up to Marco Mendicino after the debate was over, and I kept asking him questions. What do you think about this? Is this the kind of leader that you want to serve? And for once in his life, Marco Mendicino did not lie. And the reason he did not lie, Sheila, is that for once in his life, he kept his big, fat, lying mouth shut so that there were no words. He looked like Bambi in the high beams of a Hummer on the 401, okay? He was absolutely shocked. And I'm getting the same vibe from how Omar looked with William and Lincoln.
Well, you could have euthanized the confrontation there, and it wasn't even a confrontation. It was tense, but I think courteous. You could have euthanized it and taken all the air out of the balloon there if he said, when William and Lincoln asked, when does this end? He could have said tomorrow and slammed the door in their face and then drove 9 feet or whatever it was before he hit a red light. But, he could have said tomorrow, watch for it. And that would have been the end of it, knowing full well that it had already been leaked to CBC at that point, because I think the news broke as that was happening. But he didn't know. He obviously didn't know.
I think you're right, Sheila. Because he also could have used the strategy of turning the tables on Lincoln and William and just say, well, we're getting rid of mandates. I thought that's what your news organization has been campaigning for. You should be happy about this. Why are you pestering me? I've acquiesced to one of your demands, right? But like you said, he was left out of the loop, and he's the transport minister.
I know. And William's questions were so good when he's like, do they have different scientists in Ottawa than in the rest of Ontario? Like, how
clearly they do.
Yeah. How is the science different? Ottawa is in Ontario. And like, he's like, how is the science different? How is it different for you than it is for the provincial governments? And he just couldn't say. He just waved bye-bye,
and
like
Sheila,
a toddler out the window.
Oh, 100%.
As you're, as mom is pulling away from the daycare, there's, little Omar waving out the window.
And by the way, talk about getting hoisted on one's own petard. The reason why he had to do that long walk down that street towards Nate's Delicatessen, which is a fantastic deli. If you're downtown Ottawa, go check it out, folks. But the reason is that the kilometer and a half or so of Wellington Street, right in front of Parliament Hill, is still closed to traffic, folks, even though the convoy was dismantled back in late February. We're now heading into July, and it's going to be like that until at least the end of the year. Ottawa City Council is saying it might be like that permanently, which is a disgrace because Parliament Hill should not be cut off from the people of Canada. We own that hill, not the Liberal Party of Canada. Yeah. But Sheila, the irony is that had Wellington Street still been open to vehicles, that SUV could have gone and picked up Omar Al-Gabra far before he did that 200 or 300 meter walk down that sidewalk. My thanks to the city of Ottawa for putting up a hurdle for Liberal politicians trying to make a quick getaway. That's good for us here at Rebel News.
What's interesting too is that we knew that event was happening because they send that garbage out in a press release. But guess who the only journalists were there? Because nobody wants to ask these people a tough question. They're all going to be in attendance. That there's actual news out there that Canadians want answers to. And it's a journalist's job to hold the government to account. But there were no journalists asking these guys questions.
That surprises you?
That is.
Well, do you bite the hand that feeds? Really?
Exactly.
Do you bite the hand that feeds? They know where their paycheck's coming from. It's not selling subscriptions. It's not,
No.
I mean, and the fact that the federal government is doing this, well, 'twas ever thus with CBC, but for years now, the $600 million plus top up for the print media. Otherwise, that's dead on the vine. But even here in Ontario, Doug Ford giving Torstar Corporation a $500 million a year gambling license, the first online gambling license. And this is the same Torstar, publisher of the Toronto Star, that Doug and his late great brother Rob Ford referred to as a bunch of maggots, and now it's Christmas every day of the year thanks to that gambling license. And again, I think it's the Doug Ford team taking a page out of Justin Trudeau. Let's buy off the nastiest journalists by throwing money at the problem. Seems to have worked, Sheila.
Yeah, I think so. 100%. And I wonder what the Maclean's circulation is like these days as more 80-year-old dentists retire from the business, because that's the only place that I've seen Maclean's magazine in print form in a very long time. Was at the dentist's office, and it was like 4 years old.
Sheila, this just in, I can tell you, not even at walk-in clinics, doctor's offices, dental offices, I'm going by my experience in the last 2 years, are those magazines there because of, well, you guessed it, COVID. We can't be passing around filthy, germ-spreading printed materials. So they're gone. I mean, when I go to my dentist's office, he's got a built-in rack where all the magazines were nicely displayed. It's been empty for 2 years, and I don't think it's ever coming back.
That might be the only thing I'm cheering for COVID to kill. I just poked open this Patrick Brown National Post op-ed. what was the purpose of writing this? Well, like, where's the news peg here, as they say in the business? What was the point of writing this thing? To accuse conservatives of being racist when we're not? Let's just read through this really fast here, or at least some of it. Patrick Brown. Dual loyalties trope has no place in our politics. The problematic tropes of dual loyalties or ulterior motives are two that are regularly and unfairly follow members of various groups, fueling bigotry and discrimination against some of the most marginalized. I think this is a backroom defense of Theresa Tam, because it's so often the left says, oh, you're being critical of Theresa Tam because you think that since she is from Hong Kong, she couldn't possibly be loyal to Canada. No, it's because she also works for the World Health Organization that I think she doesn't always have Canada's best interests at heart. And the World Health Organization is deeply, deeply polluted by their loyalties to communist China. It's got nothing to do with the fact that she's ethnically Chinese from Hong Kong. Anyway, let's keep reading this, because this, again, as you say, it could be written by Justin Trudeau or any member of the Liberal Party of Canada. There's an issue with how some treat the participation of minority groups in Canada's democratic process. It definitely feels as if suspicion is the default position in the media and politics. This is wrong. Who's he talking about here? Who feels this way?
I know.
It's not he obviously isn't referring to CBC. Is he referring to us here? Because we over and over again, if he's saying that, like, we're critical of Chinese Canadians, actually, I'm a fan of Chinese Canadians. It takes a lot to come here. Did I just freeze up with my mouth wide open? It takes a lot to come here and be critical of the communist state from which you fled, knowing that you have a government in Ottawa that will do nothing to protect you from the tentacles of the Chinese state as they infest Canada. So you can be bullied even though you came to Canada to be free. And of all the people who are sounding the alarm bells about some policies that communist Chinese interlopers take advantage of, it's the Chinese expat community here in Canada. Yeah. Guess who were the ones that were sounding the alarm bells about anchor babies, to use an American phrase, Chinese women who are, and there's statistics from Vancouver hospitals about this, who come here deeply pregnant to have their baby so that the baby sponsors them as citizens. And you know who keeps bringing forward that issue at the Conservative Party of Canada convention? Chinese Canadian conservatives. But I guess, according to Patrick Brown, those people are racist, accusing people of dual loyalties.
Well, Sheila, one thing I have to say about this odd placement of that, commentary is the fact that I learned over the weekend, and I have to confirm this, so, and I'm going to look into it, but one of Paul Godfrey's sons is evidently connected to the Patrick Brown campaign. So, and Paul Godfrey, because the National Post is owned by Post Media, and so there might be the connection of why that gets into the paper. Because, if I was the editor, if I was the publisher, and geez, what do I know with almost 40 years of journalism under my belt, Sheila, I think the story, I think the news peg, I think the crux of the matter right now vis-a-vis Patrick Brown is, what was it again? Oh, yeah, using paid City of Brampton senior employees to work on his membership selling campaign. Yeah. Nope, zip. We won't write about that. And I did speak out to a reporter in that organization. I'm not going to name who that person is. But that person said that story is not going to fly given the internal politics. So you see what's happening here, folks, in terms of the behind the scenes situation with what gets into the paper and what stays out of the paper. And the National Post is ostensibly a right of center paper. I mean, it's not
bailout.
It's not your father's national post, to paraphrase the Oldsmobile ad of yesterdecade. It's not the national post when Conrad Black was the founder of that post, and what a fantastic paper it was. I loved freelancing for it. Now you've got basically woke staff within it that, well, do you remember, what was it, a year or two ago when they had a petition against Rex Murphy, probably the numero uno talent at the National Post, because he did something unwokey? That's the National Post of today. So they publish this tripe, this garbage, and again, it's Patrick Brown saying anything to anyone, whether or not he believes it, whether or not he's going to mandate it. That's besides the point. It's all about the quest for power, for the simple reason of he wants power. He's not about public service. He's not about making Canada better. He's not about standing up for Canadian minorities. It's me, 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 me. Enough about me. Let's talk about me. That's Patrick Brown.
Well, and this is crazy because I don't understand what prompted this to be written in the first place. Patrick Brown, that he writes an article accusing Canadians of being racist, particularly Canadian conservatives of being racist. And then he says, but don't worry, I'm not racist and I'll lead the party out of our racism. For example, he says, we cannot expect people to break away from their heritage or to not have opinions on current affairs from where they may have immigrated from. Well, who is saying that they can't?
Yeah.
Who's saying that they can't? This is a reality for most Canadians, as we all are immigrants, save for our Indigenous peoples. One of the beautiful parts of our country is the ability to maintain pride in one's roots while maintaining a deep love of being Canadian. Some only see the worst in the Chinese Canadian community, pushing them away and attempting to dismiss their diverse concerns by alleging they are simply directives from foreign bodies. Nobody is saying that.
Wait a minute, but
who
Sheila,
is saying that?
Who? Show me. Who's the pusher? Who are these people? I mean, what is he talking about? That's bad journalism, by the way, because at the end of that sentence, the following sentence should happen, Sheila, which is, for example, consider this incident, consider that. But it's all abstract. There's nothing tangible there.
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just like Canadians are racist, but I'm not. So that's why conservatives have to vote for me. And that's literally Justin Trudeau's campaign slogan. You guys are racist, but I'm not. Ignore the blackface, vote for me.
Yeah. And in Brown's case, and if you ask me any impolite questions, I will phone the police.
I'm going to call the 50. Yeah. Okie doke. Okay, we've got a few chats to read.
Fantastic.
And then we're going to sign off. But if people want to stay on the live stream, we're going to go straight into the announcement of hopefully the repeal of the travel restrictions. And then Ezra, I predict that he will take to the skies like some mighty Jewish eagle. And he will fly all over the country and out to our beloved Calgary. I see it. Like when I heard that it was potentially falling today, I thought, oh, Ezra's like booking flights right now. Because I think he missed flying and connecting with us and going around the country and visiting our journalists and the people who've supported us over the last couple of years in spite of the pandemic and the lockdown and the hit to their finances. They keep telling us to fight on. We've got a lot of thanking those people in person to do. Well,
I want to tell the big boss man next time I see him, if he is going to fly out to Calgary, find out if there are flights going out of Hamilton Airport to Calgary. The time it takes to drive to Hamilton, even in rush hour, you are going to more than make up from that swamp, that slice of hell that is Pearson International Airport, where people are spending hours, in some case a couple of days. They sleep over in the airport to get processed, or maybe they've missed their connecting flight, which is very much de rigueur these days. So if Ezra can book that flight to Calgary out of Hamilton, It is worth the drive, Sheila. I wouldn't go anywhere near Pearson International Airport. I think it is the worst airport in the world right now. In the world.
for sure.
And I would probably drive to Calgary before going through the mess of Pearson. But like I said, drive down the QEW to Hamilton, fly out there, and Bob's your uncle.
Well, David, that reminds me to ask you, and since I'm doing this on air, then you can't say no. My daughter has to fly to the country for rugby in a week, and I might need you to perform a rescue mission at Pearson Airport.
I would be delighted.
That's where she connects through. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you're going to be across the country away from me, stuck in the hellscape of Toronto Pearson. Good thing there's an office full of people who can come rescue you if you have to spend the night in Toronto.
Sheila, you give me the day and the time. The only question I have, do you want her picked up in the Green Goblin or the Red Rocket?
Oh, we're going to have to go with combustion for sure. Anyway, now that you said it on air, you can't take it back. So anyway.
No, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay, let's get to some of these chats. We got Fraser McBurney, Fight
you.
the Finds Recidivist from Hamilton, with his cap locks fully engaged, gives us $5 and says, have you seen the lists of food plant fires since January 2022? I sure have. I know Tucker Carlson's been on this case. He's really been the first person who sort of put together all these food processing plants that have had mysterious fires in the last, 6 months. Speaking of fires and catastrophes, I feel like I've gone back in time a little bit because Fort McMurray has a fire sort of raging just outside of it, but it seems to be under control, and Calgary potential flooding today.
Wow.
So Calgary declared a state of emergency yesterday. So I don't know if they're experiencing any of the Bow River breaking its banks, but they're on alert. And of course, naturally, that reminds me I should send our researcher a quick note to see if you can snag any environmentalists and left-wing activists who they say they're not religious, but every time that there's a fire or flood, they claim it is the smite of the earth coming after us for our climate sins. So I always like to pay attention to those when people take somebody's misery and destruction and use it for their own cause.
Sheila, 3 weeks ago, we had a so-called severe weather alert. It was a storm that lasted maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Trees fell down. I mean, it was super severe. I mean, I guess it was close to a hurricane technically. And when you tuned into the mainstream media on TV and radio, basically the lead, well, another example that climate change or the climate crisis is real, as a windstorm touched down in North Toronto. Sheila, these storms have been around since the inception of the planet. I mean, and they can't even make the distinction between weather and climate. And, a 15-minute storm is all the proof you need that we're in a climate crisis? Give me a break.
Well, and that's the thing. In fact, I've seen some meteorological data that shows that there are actually fewer hurricanes and severe weather events in that respect. And the ones we do get, they claim fewer lives because of humans' ability to adapt and be resilient to their environment. But instead of, even if climate change were happening, and even if my beautiful, comfortable SUV were doing it, pretty sure we're adaptable. We can send people off the planet to the moon. We're getting into commercial commuter space travel at this point. Pretty sure we can adapt to a 0.2% or whatever it is of global climate. And by the way, how do you even measure that? What's 2%, 0.2 of a degree? How do you measure that across the surface of the face of the earth?
Yeah, and I'm sure those contrarians are now called deniers, even though they have extensive qualifications to weigh in on this matter. By the way, Sheila, do you have any desire to go up into space?
No, not at all.
Really?
I don't even like flying. Yeah, no, not at all. No, I don't even like flying. I do it for work. I'm claustrophobic, David, remember?
That's true. I didn't know, but I mean, wouldn't being in space be the polar opposite of being in a claustrophobic environment, given that it's the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. You're just
yeah, but I'm
floating
in
around.
a pod like this. I'm in a pod like this, being crushed. At least that's how I feel. It'd be like putting me in a submarine. The
Wow.
vastness of the ocean is no consolation for the fact that I'm in this thing.
My problem is I can't afford the ticket. I think these are what 7 or 8 figure tickets to get on these spaceships, and too bad. I'd be so gung ho, Sheila. I might even wear a Star Trek uniform, pretend I'm in Starfleet.
Of course you would. Okay, we got to breeze through these because we got to get to this thing, and I talk too much. Okay, Joyful from the Heart gives us $1. Any thoughts on Leslyn Lewis saying she would do a third debate if it is with the independent press? Yeah, I thought that was weird that some of the other candidates are like, I'm in for a third debate, and we're at the independent press gallery, we're over here saying, yeah, we organized one and you guys backed out. So I like that Leslyn is saying that, pointing out, yeah, we tried to have one and you guys were too scared.
Exactly.
Cheryl Dawn V gives us $1. Is a rebel investigating the Klondike Papers? No, I'm not. I'll look into it. I'm not sure if that's QAnon business, but I will look into it when I'm not doing other things. Mick3.ca, $1. 2, whoever thinks the travel ban ends for good, no, it won't unless all the elites are arrested for good. No, it's not going to happen. Word has it that in Quebec and Toronto, people are receiving the monkeypox jab. I'm not sure.
I didn't hear that.
No, but I know that none of these people are going to be arrested. Will be for what, by the way? And secondarily, I don't even think we're going to get a full accounting for what happened and how things were mismanaged, let alone people be incarcerated for their role in any of it. I'm just not hopeful.
I'm just not going to let them make a monkey out of me with this fact.
Wow. Okay, let's wrap it up. We got to go to the announcement.
Okay, then. All right, well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I think it's 1 o'clock right on the dot, so tight show today. My thanks to Sheila Gunn-Reid, the team behind the boards there. That would be Danny and Olivia and Efren. And thank you for all of you who made Super Chats. It's how we keep the lights on here. In the meantime, 2 other Rebels will be here at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. And Sheila and I will be back on Thursday. And in the meantime, as always, stay sane.
progress.
Bonjour et bienvenue à cette conférence de presse. Hello and welcome to this press conference. I'm Elizabeth Thompson with CBC News. In a second, I will invite everyone to, if they want to ask a question, to let me know. We will have statements from the ministers followed by questions. I'm told that they have until 2 o'clock. So if everyone can keep questions and answers and statements short, we'll get as much territory covered as possible. If those in the room, raise your hand. This is going to be like the National Press Theatre and I'm explaining that simply because this is the largest number of people I think we've had in months, if not for a couple of years, in person covering the press conference. So in room, raise your hand. If you are on Zoom, use the raised hand function and you will be able to join the queue. Ministers?
So thank you, Elizabeth, et bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon. Today I'm joined by my colleagues, the Minister of Transport, Omar Al-Gabra, the Minister of Health, Jean-Yves Duclos, and the President of the Treasury Board, Mona Fortier. Our top priority continues to be the health and safety of all Canadians, and our commitment to work together with provinces and territories to keep Canadians safe remains unchanged. As the warmer weather arrives, we know that across the country, Canadians are looking forward to seeing friends and family and enjoying the outdoors. Notre gouvernement a mis en œuvre des mesures importantes afin de sécuriser nos frontières et assurer la sécurité des Canadiens. Ces mesures ont été efficaces, mais elles n'étaient jamais censées d'être permanentes. Aujourd'hui, nous pouvons annoncer des ajustements à nos mesures sanitaires parce que les Canadiens se sont mobilisés pour se protéger mutuellement et ont suivi les conseils de la santé publique. Mais nous devons nous assurer d'être prêts pour un retour potentiel du virus à l'automne et notre meilleure protection contre la COVID-19 demeure la vaccination. Si vous n'avez pas encore reçu votre première dose de vaccin ou votre dose de rappel, je vous encourage fortement à aller les chercher. Today's announcement is possible because Canadians have stepped up to protect each other. We are now able to adjust our policy because we have followed consistently the best advice from public health authorities. But we need to make sure we are ready for the fall, and our best protection against COVID-19 is being properly vaccinated. If you haven't gotten your vaccines or your booster yet, I encourage you to do so. I know that Canadians may wonder, is this too fast or is this too slow? It has been very tough for Canadians these past 2 years. Our job as a national government has always been to keep Canadians safe. If the situation takes a turn for the worse, we are prepared to bring back the policies necessary to protect Canadians. We don't regret at all being cautious when it comes to a virus that has tragically killed tens of thousands of Canadians and millions of people around the world. Acting prudently has saved lives, and we will always continue to be cautious. Nous ne regrettons pas du tout d'avoir agi prudemment devant un virus qui a tragiquement coûté la vie à des milliers de Canadiens. This announcement is not about shortening wait times that are currently being experienced at some of Canada's airports. As you know, these wait times are mainly caused by staffing shortages. The adjustments we're making today are based on science, and they will not have an impact immediately on these airport delays. We remain committed to reducing the wait times at Canada's airport. We have already taken a number of steps to improve this situation, and my colleague, the Transport Minister, will have more to say in the coming moments. Thanks to Canadians, we are able to make today's announcement. And to share what precise next steps are to come, I'd like to invite my colleague, the Minister of Transport, to say a few words. Omar.
Thank you, Dominic. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. COVID-19 and its threat to our public health and our economy has caused governments around the world and in Canada to take extraordinary measures to protect their citizens. Our government has made a solemn commitment to Canadians to be prudent and focus on doing the right thing, guided by science and expert advice. Our approach to protecting Canadians has worked. Canada has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with one of the lowest death rates in the world, and is also experiencing one of the fastest economic recoveries. We've seen how our measures have slowed down several COVID peaks and has given our healthcare system early warnings to adjust and respond. As the COVID situation evolves and as we learn more about this virus, we have been adjusting our measures. Many of these measures have been lifted. And it's clear that the COVID situation is not the same now as it was last fall when we implemented the vaccine mandate for travelers and transport workers. La situation de la COVID-19 a évolué depuis l'automne dernier. And this is thanks to the millions of Canadians who rolled up their sleeves and got vaccinated. That's why today's announcement is possible. And I'm pleased to announce that on June 20th, our government will suspend the requirement to be vaccinated in order to board a plane or train in Canada. Le 20 juin, notre gouvernement suspendra l'obligation de se faire vacciner pour monter à bord d'un avion ou d'un train au Canada. Employers in the federally regulated transportation sector will also no longer need to have vaccination requirement for their employees. The suspension of the vaccine mandate was informed by key indicators, including the epidemiological situation and modeling, vaccine science, and high levels of vaccination against COVID-19 in Canada. As for travelers coming to Canada by air, land, and marine, there are no changes. Il n'y a pas de changement pour le voyageur qui entre au Canada. All travelers entering Canada must continue to follow all entry requirements, including vaccination and using ArriveCan. As for cruise ships, vaccination for passengers and crew will remain in place. This decision is based on the unique nature of cruise ship travel, including the fact that passengers are in close contact with each other for an extended periods of time. Also, travelers on federally regulated planes and trains still need to wear a mask. Les voyageurs doivent continuer de porter un masque dans les avions et le train. Masks are an effective way of reducing transmission, especially in areas with restricted space, such as onboard planes, trains, or cruise ships. Our government will always continue to evaluate measures and will not hesitate to make additional adjustments based on the latest public health advice and science. It's also important to note that while travelers will be able to board a plane without having to verify their vaccination status, international travelers need to verify public health requirements imposed by the country they want to visit. Many countries around the world, including the US, continue to require a proof of vaccination upon entering their country. I want to thank all the travelers who've been vaccinated to protect themselves and others, as well as the transport workers who are working tirelessly to ensure the recovery of the sector. Thank you, everyone. Merci. And now I'd like to give the floor to Minister Fortier.
Thank you. Merci, Ministre Alghabra. J'aimerais tout d'abord commencer par reconnaître que je vous adresse depuis mon salon ici à Ottawa-Vanier sur le territoire traditionnel non cédé de la nation algonquine-Anishinabek. La vaccination a été et demeure le moyen le plus efficace de prévenir les maladies graves causées par la COVID-19. Et dès le début de la pandémie, nous nous sommes engagés auprès des Canadiennes et des Canadiens à protéger leur santé et leur sécurité. Nous avons mis en place des mesures pour protéger les travailleurs et nos communautés. Et c'est pourquoi, en octobre dernier, le gouvernement a mis en œuvre la politique de vaccination contre la COVID-19 pour l'administration publique centrale, y compris la GRC. As the employer of the federal public service, the government has a responsibility to ensure public service servants can work safely. And the policy has done what it was meant to do. It helped make federal work sites, as well as the communities where public servants live and work, safer. And it provided a safer environment for Canadians accessing government services in person, including for more vulnerable members of our communities. Public servants understand the importance of keeping themselves and others safe, which is why close to 99% of them stepped up and got vaccinated. Public service servants were not alone in rolling up their sleeves. D'un bout à l'autre du pays, les Canadiennes et les Canadiens ont fait leur part. Ils ont pris les devants pour se protéger et protéger les personnes qui les entourent. Et maintenant, les taux d'hospitalisation et les cas de maladies graves causés par la COVID-19 sont en baisse dans tout le pays. Aujourd'hui, avec des taux d'immunité en hausse et un taux de vaccination parmi les plus élevés au monde, la situation de la santé publique au Canada s'est nettement améliorée. Et c'est pourquoi le gouvernement suspend l'obligation de vaccination pour les fonctionnaires à compter du 20 juin 2022. As of that date, employees of the core public administration, including the RCMP, will no longer be required to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as a condition of employment. Employees who are on administrative leave without pay as a result of the vaccination policy will be contacted by their managers to resume regular duties with pay, and the bargaining agents have been informed. Similarly, we expect other vaccine requirements put in place for employees of separate agencies, crown corporations, governor and council appointments, and contractors to also be suspended. And I want to reiterate that vaccines continue to provide strong protection against serious illness. All Canadians should keep their vaccinations up to date to keep that protection as high as possible. Et en conclusion, la politique du gouvernement du Canada en matière de vaccination a contribué à faire en sorte que les fonctionnaires puissent travailler dans un environnement sain et sécuritaire, que ce soit dans un bureau, un centre de service, à la frontière ou à la maison. La situation a évolué, tout comme notre réponse, et la suspension de la politique reflète le fait que nous avons pris des mesures responsables pour gérer la pandémie et par conséquent, nous nous trouvons maintenant dans une bien meilleure situation. Mais soyons clairs, la pandémie n'est pas encore terminée. Vigilance, remains essential to protect not only our own health, but our healthcare system and our economy. Again, this means keeping up to date with our vaccinations, and it also means being ready to adjust our approach. Et permettez-moi de réitérer ce que je viens de dire en français. La vigilance demeure essentielle pour protéger non seulement notre propre santé, mais aussi notre système de santé et notre économie. Et encore une fois, cela signifie que nous devons mettre à jour nos vaccinations et être prêts à adapter notre approche. The government will continue to closely monitor domestic and international scientific evidence to assess the need for appropriate public health measures, including a reintroduction of vaccine mandates if necessary. Et comme nous le faisons depuis le début, nous continuerons à protéger les Canadiennes, les Canadiens et le Canada. C'est notre engagement et notre plus grande priorité. Thank you, merci. Et je cède maintenant la parole au ministre Duclos.
Merci, Mona, et bonjour à tous et à toutes. J'ai le plaisir, moi aussi, d'être accompagné aujourd'hui par mes collègues ministres, le ministre Leblanc, le ministre Algabra et la ministre Fortier, bien que virtuellement, pour cette importante annonce. I would like to begin by recognizing the enormous strides we have made since the beginning of this pandemic. Our government's response has always been informed by evolving science, research, prudence, and expert public health advice to help make decisions that serve to protect people everywhere in Canada. Following a successful vaccination campaign supported by proactive vaccine procurements and collaboration at all levels of government, 32 million eligible people in Canada have now received a primary series of vaccination against COVID-19. La science est en constante évolution et chaque jour, nous en apprenons plus sur le virus. Et la science est claire. La vaccination demeure l'un des moyens les plus efficaces de protéger nos familles et nos communautés et de nous protéger nous-mêmes contre la COVID-19. Nous savons maintenant aussi que la vaccination peut contribuer à réduire le risque de développer ce qu'on appelle le syndrome post-COVID-19, aussi appelé la COVID longue, en cas d'infection. Si la vaccination demeure essentielle, le variant Omicron nous a toutefois démontré que 2 doses ne suffisent plus, car avec le temps, l'immunité acquise grâce au vaccin 2 doses actuel s'amenuise. Dans ce contexte, il est donc essentiel que nous comprenions tous et toutes l'importance de suivre les recommandations des autorités de santé publique de mettre à jour notre statut vaccinal. En clair, cela veut dire que si vous êtes admissible à une 3e ou même une 4e dose en vertu des recommandations des autorités de santé publique, vous devriez la recevoir dès que possible. Il s'agit de la meilleure façon d'éviter de développer une forme grave de la maladie, d'être hospitalisé ou d'en mourir, et une très bonne façon aussi de réduire les infections et la transmission. Il s'agit aussi de la meilleure façon de protéger nos travailleurs de la santé qui sont sous un énorme fardeau et de protéger aussi les plus vulnérables parmi nous. Though vaccination remains absolutely essential, the Omicron variant has shown us that 2 doses are no longer enough because the immunity acquired through 2 doses varies and wanes over time. In this context, it is therefore essential that all Canadians understand the importance of following the recommendations of public health authorities and stay up to date with their vaccination. In simple terms, this means that if you are eligible for a 3rd or even a 4th dose under the recommendations of public health officials, you should receive it as soon as possible. This is the best way to avoid developing a serious form of COVID-19, being hospitalized or dying from it. It's also the best way to reduce the spread of COVID-19 and the incidence of long COVID. It's also the best way to protect our healthcare workers and the most vulnerable among us. As mentioned by my colleagues, after reviewing the latest scientific evidence, evolving COVID-19 epidemiology globally and in Canada, vaccination coverage rates, and listening to the advice of public health officials and experts, we have decided to suspend mandatory vaccination for domestic travelers, transportation workers, and federal employees. The context has changed in that we now benefit from better levels of immunity from both vaccination and infection, the wider availability of antiviral drugs, and lower and decreasing hospitalization rates. Canada is now better equipped to effectively manage the COVID-19 pandemic and reduce pressure on our healthcare workers. As I have said, because of the immense value of maintaining individual and collective immunity, both in terms of protecting our healthcare system and our economy, the Government of Canada recommends that everyone in Canada continue to protect themselves and their loved ones by staying up to date with COVID-19 vaccines, which includes a third dose for all adults. While the suspension of vaccine mandates reflects an improved public health situation in Canada, the COVID-19 virus continues to evolve rapidly and circulate in Canada and globally. Given this context, current vaccination requirements and other measures at the border entry will remain in effect to reduce the potential impact of international travel on our healthcare system and workers, and track the potential introduction of new variants of concern. As the COVID-19 situation evolves and our country prepares itself for whatever may come our way later and in the fall, we will continue to evaluate new evidence to determine the best way to reduce the burden of COVID-19 in our communities and protect our healthcare workers and patients. Avant de conclure, j'aimerais rappeler à tous et à toutes que la COVID-19 est toujours une réalité parmi nous. Le gouvernement du Canada continuera de travailler en étroite collaboration avec toutes les provinces et tous les territoires pour faire en sorte que toutes les personnes admissibles puissent recevoir leur dose de rappel et être ainsi à jour dans leur vaccination. Again, let me be very clear. Vaccination, combined with individual public health measures, continues to be the best way to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our economy as we return to the activities and social interactions we have so dearly missed over the past 2 years. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now go to questions. Everyone gets one question, one follow-up. If everyone can try to keep the questions and the answers short, because we only have 15 or 18 minutes left out of the time we are told that you have to leave for question period. So, and the more people know, the better the reporting. First question, Raymond Giroux, TVA. Filion, sorry.
Le port du masque ne sera plus obligatoire dans les transports en commun presque partout au Canada dans une question de jours. Pourquoi le garder obligatoire dans les trains et les avions?
Parce que, en fait, c'est une excellente question. La ministre, la ministre en chef de la santé publique, Mme Tam, le Dr Tam l'a traité vendredi dernier. C'est qu'il s'agit, selon la santé publique, d'une mesure à la fois efficace et peu coûteuse qui s'ajoute aux autres mesures de santé publique qui servent à protéger les gens et les travailleurs dans les environnements où l'espace est restreint et les contacts sont étroits.
Et pourquoi garder ArriveCan? Beaucoup de gens s'en sont plaints ces derniers mois. Pourquoi ça demeure en vigueur et est-ce que c'est là pour toujours, ArriveCan?
Let me take a stab at this question. And first, let me talk about masks. Again, as Minister Duclos has said, the evidence is clear that mask is an effective layer of protection. And given how a minor inconvenience it is and the benefit that it poses to not only the passengers, but the people sitting next to them, thinking of vulnerable individuals, immune compromise, I think it's a small, minor inconvenience to ask of travelers who are sitting together in a small, tight, enclosed place. About ArriveCan. ArriveCan is a tool, as I stated in my remarks, we are maintaining a vaccine requirement for international travelers who are arriving to Canada. And ArriveCan is a very helpful tool to ensure that arriving travelers have the required vaccination certificate. We are working with CBSA, with Public Health Agency of Canada to ensure that we increase awareness about ArriveCAN, that we increase compliance with ArriveCAN, that we reduce numbers of questions that are asked to streamline. So we're working on efficiencies to ensure that ArriveCAN is less of a source of complaint. However, it continues to be a meaningful tool to verify the vaccination status of travelers who are arriving into our borders.
David Cochrane, CBC.
First question is for Minister Fortier. This is a suspension of the vaccine requirement for public sector workers. So you say the ones who have been suspended without pay will be allowed to come back to work. But should COVID conditions worsen in the fall and you have to bring back the vaccine mandate for the public service, could they go through an unpaid suspension all over again if there's no change in their status?
Well, first, thank you for your question. And as you know, public servants that did not attest having vaccination that were leave without pay, currently they will be able to come back to work as we are suspending. If we go back in the fall or at some point with the mandates, we will go back to the policy that we had in place. I think that is something we have to make sure to focus on the fact that public servants stepped up in this current vaccine mandate. Up to or close to 99% of the public servants attested having both vaccines. And we have to commend public service of stepping up for that. Thank you.
And a follow-up question for Mr. Alghabra. What does this mean for cross-border truckers who certainly made their views on all of this well-known earlier this year? Does this in any way affect the status of the people who occupied the downtown of the city core?
David, let me be clear, as I've been trying to clarify this for Canadians throughout this, is that truckers have actually also stepped up. The vast majority of truckers have gotten vaccinated. And we saw that ever since the introduction of vaccine mandate at the border, that our trucking volume at the border, not only was it not impacted, but we've been seeing increases. What that tells me is that truckers have stepped up and done their part to protect themselves, their families, and the sector. And we're also seeing an equivalent measure at the U.S. border. So we know that this is a reciprocal a measure that the U.S. expects of truckers who are crossing the borders, and Canada has the same reciprocal measures. It continues to be an important tool to ensure that we protect Canada against importation of the virus. Having said that, we will constantly assess our measures as we've demonstrated in the past. But I'll tell you, truckers are stepping up. They've continued to provide service for Canadians and deliver the products that Canadians need.
Kevin Carmichael, CTV.
Sorry, Kevin Gallagher here with CTV.
My apologies. This is the second time I've done this.
You're very forgiven, no problem. I think I want to move on right away to right now, if more Canadians who are unvaccinated can now travel in airports like Pearson that are already clogged, what's the plan to deal with the expected increase in travel of unvaccinated Canadians?
Kevin, the issue at airports is an important issue for our government. We have been acting and working collaboratively with airports, with airlines, to ensure that we have increased efficiencies at our airports. We're seeing, as you've heard me say this before, and the facts prove that point, similar phenomena at airports around the world, because we're seeing surge in demand that the capacities of airports are struggling to keep up with. Having said that, we have put a lot of measures in place. We've increased resources of CATSA significantly, CBSA. We've suspended and are going to be lifting random testing at airports, off airports. We've streamlined some processes, including ArriveCAN, as I mentioned earlier. We are regularly speaking to airlines and airports. And by the way, airlines are struggling as well with resources. We continue to encourage them to do as much as they can, just like the government is doing. We're adding resources. We're seeing airports need to add more resources, but there is a plan. Measures have been in place, and regular discussions on a daily basis are taking place to ensure. And the data, by the way, proves it. The last couple of weeks, we're seeing significant improvements in delay data, whether for outbound travel or inbound travelers, but I know we need to do more.
Is there specific data that you can mention that leads to today's decision? Why is the hospitalization rates, COVID rates, and other data that you've looked at to make this decision today, what's different about today and June 20th that could not have been done a month ago?
I'll ask Minister Duclos as well to add his own comments, but I'll tell you, this decision today took a lot of discussions and consultations. So the decision today is not based on something that we woke up yesterday or this morning and decided to do. We've done our homework. This is what Canadians expect us to do. They've seen us focus on their health and safety, and that every time we've put in place a measure or lifted a measure, it's done guided by science with the aim of protecting the health and safety of Canadians. So what got us today was a period of discussions, of consultations, of looking at the big picture, of preparing ourselves for a potential wave in the fall, but the current situation today. So we had to look at all the options and all the data that we have, and after a thoughtful, deliberate, prudent discussions, we've reached this decision. So it's what Canadians expect us to do. We will always err on the side of public health and safety.
I would add that the key word today is transition. And Dr. Tam spoke to that just last Friday. She spoke clearly about the need to transition. We've done extremely well in Canada until now. We had, as we all know, we've had a very large two-dose rate in Canada, which has led to one of the lowest death rates in the world, of which we can be very proud. Obviously, that comes with lower numbers of hospitalizations, smaller economic costs than we would have had otherwise. Dr. Tam also signaled that in the 5 first months of this year, we have had as many deaths and hospitalizations as in the entire year of 2021. So that decision took the time it needed to be taken so that we could keep protecting the health and safety of Canadians. COVID-19 is still with us. Fortunately, in the last few weeks, as we were hoping, the epidemiology has improved. The number of hospitalizations, cases, and deaths has fallen. And experts tell us that we should expect the next few weeks in the summertime, for obvious reasons, to be relatively good in terms of COVID-19, like the last 2 summers have been also better than around the two summers. What we also know from Dr. Tan and every other expert on COVID-19 is that although 2 doses still protects significantly well against severe disease and death, 2 doses are not enough now to protect against infection and transmission. And that is why we are transitioning now to an up-to-date vaccination definition of what it means to be adequately protected against COVID-19. Fully protected with 2 doses doesn't work anymore. Dr. Tam said that last Friday. It's now up-to-date vaccination that needs to be used when you talk about what Canadians should do, what we should expect of Canadians, and what this government should be expected to do in the future. As we do that, we are going to take advantage in the next few weeks and months to work closely with provinces and territories to increase significantly our rate of 3rd doses. Our rate of boosters in Canada is too low. It's lower than all other G7 countries, and that is not good. However, we know we can do better, and we have done really well with 2 doses over the last a year and a half, and that's what we're going to do also in the next weeks and months with all provinces and territories, so that we are better prepared and sufficiently prepared for what, as Minister Alghabra said, may be coming in the fall.
Okay. Now, I'm told that the ministers will be able to stay with us a few more minutes than originally forecast. And now, if I can get this right, Ryan Tumulty, National Post.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you just talked about the ineffectiveness of 2 doses versus the Omicron. Did you consider, as part of these discussions, creating a mandate for 3 doses instead of suspending the mandates?
We have considered all options, and we will keep considering all options as we keep protecting the health and safety of Canadians. That's what they ask of us. That's what we'll keep doing. And according to what public health experts have told us internally, and as you heard Dr. Tam say publicly on Friday, we now need to transition to an up-to-date status, which for most adults means a third dose. There are approximately 60% of adults in Canada that have a third dose. We need to move that up significantly, at least to what we have had for the last few months in terms of second doses. About 90% of Canadians have had a second dose, and that's a great outcome of which we can collectively be very proud. So it's a type of objectives and ambitions that we can set collectively. Dr. Tam has said just on Friday, that is needed now with the science that has evolved and with the epidemiology that is now making it possible today to make those announcements and prepare for a strong vaccination campaign with the full input and obviously collaboration of provinces and territories.
And Minister Alghabra, you've said today that you're going to keep ArriveCAN and the vaccination requirement for international travels. I've heard from a lot of people that say that is one of the major bottlenecks at airports because the CBSA has to check vaccine credentials from all over the world in all sorts of different formats. Can you explain, given that it's a significant barrier, why you feel keeping that is so essential?
First of all, it is important to continue to require a proof of vaccination from international travelers. It is, again, vaccine, even a 2-dose vaccine, continues to protect against severity of illness. And in order for us to continue to protect the demands on our public healthcare system, we want to make sure that incoming travelers are at minimum vaccinated. Second, ArriveCAN is a tool that public health and CBSA are utilizing to verify and ensure that incoming travelers have the proof of vaccination required. Third, are there ways for us to improve how the processes at airports to verify proof of vaccination? Absolutely. And as I stated earlier, we are working with airlines to ensure higher ArriveCAN compliance by ensuring that airlines inform their passengers prior to boarding on the plane better. We looked at the data. We saw which airlines needed more help to ensure the better compliance, and we're working with those airlines. We're working with airports to ensure that there's better compliance once the passenger arrives. We're working with CBSA to minimize the number of questions that are duplicative, for example, and we don't have to ask these questions. So we're looking at, and we have implemented many measures to ease potential bottlenecks. But I want to close by saying this other point that I've said on many occasions. International airports are facing similar challenges. Heathrow's airport, Amsterdam airports, Dublin's airports, US airports. This is a phenomena that we're seeing because of the surge in demand and the labor is trying to catch up to that surge. And we're not saying that to accept the current situation. We're acting. We have a responsibility to act. We're working with airlines, we're working with airports, and we're doing everything we can to ease those bottlenecks.
Valérie Gamache, Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, M. Duclos. Je veux juste clarifier. Bon, vous dites la 2 doses, c'est pas suffisant. On veut encourager de travailler avec les provinces pour arriver à 3 doses. Est-ce que s'il y a un retour à l'obligation vaccinale, ce sera une obligation à 3 doses à l'automne?
Comme je le disais en anglais, toutes les mesures sont envisagées et envisageables parce qu'on ne sait pas ce qui nous attend pour l'automne et on va être préparé à tout. On sait que 2 choses, que la COVID-19 va être avec nous à l'automne et on sait qu'elle pourrait être avec nous avec d'autres variants que le variant Omicron et que peu importe que ce soit le variant Omicron ou d'autres variants, la meilleure façon de se protéger, c'est d'avoir une vaccination à jour. Une vaccination à jour, pour la grande majorité des Québécois, c'est une vaccination à 3 doses. Pour certains Québécois, c'est une vaccination à 4 doses, mais on insiste sur la 3 doses parce que tous les adultes au Québec sont maintenant admissibles à une vaccination à 3 doses, évidemment en respectant les consignes de la santé publique qui demandent aux gens d'attendre quelques mois après une 2e dose. Donc, ceci étant dit, avec ce que la Dr Tam a dit vendredi dernier, il ne serait pas possible de retourner à un mandat de 2 doses. Donc, c'était d'autres mandats. ou d'autres mesures de santé publique, les mesures de quarantaine, les mesures de tests, ce seraient des mesures qui auraient besoin de reposer à partir de maintenant sur une définition de vaccination à jour.
Et M. Leblanc, vous avez parlé tout à l'heure en disant que les gens vont revenir là, dans les aéroports, les travailleurs, et ça va faire en sorte qu'éventuellement le trafic va reprendre, je dirais, là, les activités vont reprendre, mais ça ne se fera pas du jour au lendemain rapidement. Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que tout ça arrive un peu trop tard pour sauver la saison touristique?
Moi, je ne pense pas. Et comme on a dit clairement, les mesures ici, la suspension des mandats en ce qui a trait à la vaccination, n'ont rien à faire avec la congestion et les retards que nous voyons aux aéroports. Cette situation-là est causée par une série de facteurs, la pénurie de main-d'œuvre à travers tous les acteurs économiques à l'intérieur et à l'extérieur de nos aéroports. Nous avons pris les mesures aujourd'hui basées sur l'avis scientifique, l'évolution, comme M. Duclos a dit, du virus, et les meilleurs outils nécessaires pour protéger les Canadiens. On a d'autres façons de travailler avec les compagnies aériennes et d'autres afin d'alléger la congestion et les difficultés que nous voyons aux aéroports. M. Alghabra a bien dit, c'est un phénomène qu'on voit à travers le monde, à d'autres aéroports internationaux qui n'ont peut-être pas la même posture que nous avons au Canada en termes de mandat de vaccins. Et nous allons maintenir, comme il se doit, les mesures pour les voyageurs internationaux qui arrivent au Canada. Alors, moi, je ne veux pas prétendre que nous prenons des mesures ou nous annonçons des mesures aujourd'hui visées sur des questions touristiques ou aux aéroports. Comme depuis le début, les décisions que nous prenons aujourd'hui sont basées sur la meilleure façon que nous croyons nous pouvons agir pour protéger les Canadiens, et nous ne ferons jamais des excuses pour avoir une approche prudente qui prend en considération notre devoir solennel d'avoir en place les mesures nécessaires pour protéger les Canadiens.
Donna McCharles, Toronto Star.
Hi. Mr. Alghabra, I'm not sure I understand, though, you've talked about the work you've done till now working to ease chaos at airports, but you're essentially allowing about 7 million more Canadians and their families to travel now. So what exactly is the federal government doing to ease the potential lineups and chaos that could cause?
So, Tanya, first of all, we'd be happy to provide you with data over the last 2 weeks and how we are seeing significant improvements over the last 2 weeks of the flow of passengers, either outbound or inbound. And including inbound, there's at least 40% reduction of hold from this week compared to last week. Having said that, let me go through some of the measures that we've been doing to ease some of the congestions that we're witnessing at airports. We've hired 900, today, by the way, the number is almost 900 CATSA staff, and that's in a span of few weeks. If you understand labor shortages that we're facing today, you know what a big feat that's been. 900 workers, CATSA has have been added to our staff, and now we're seeing a lot of improvement as well as outbound travels. We are streamlining arrivals processes. So I talked about ArriveCan. We're increasing compliance. We're increasing kiosks at CBSA. CBSA is also hiring a lot of summer students. So there's a lot more resources right now available and improved processes for receiving international travelers. There's daily meetings, particularly at Pearson Airport, that brings together CBSA, Transport Canada, CATSA, Public Health, and airlines, where they're discussing every day the current schedules, the current potential bottlenecks, and taking action on the spot to ease these pressures. So I want to say that it is Yes, it is an international phenomenon, but our government is acting urgently, swiftly, and decisively to provide the support to airlines, to airports. We are now calling as well on airports and airlines to do everything they can to continue to work with us on ensuring that we smooth in these potential bottlenecks. So there's been a lot of measures, and we're seeing, through data, we're seeing improvements over the last few weeks.
Minister Duclos, can you tell me when exactly did Dr. Tam and the Public Health Agency first advise you that the government could relax these restrictions? And since you've said that the third dose, basically being 2 dosed, is not enough, third dose is, the decision not to change that formal definition of what it is to be fully vaccinated, I'm not sure I understand why you don't actually change that now as opposed to wait until the fall or some other time.
Okay, let me be, and I should let Dr. Tam obviously speak for herself, but Dr. Tam didn't advise us to drop a particular measure in particular. As openly, she said on Friday, she said that 2 doses don't work anymore when it comes to protecting against infection and transmission. Doesn't work enough. Obviously, it's better than 0 dose, but not enough compared to what a Delta situation would have generated. And she also pointed to the fact that the issue is the waning immunity. If you get the 2 dose, the second dose now, you'll be protected the range of between 40 and 80% against infection, plus an additional protection against transmission, but that wanes over time. So after 6 to 7 months, it's around 20% or lower when it comes to protection against infection and transmission, and that's not enough. However, what she also said on Friday, and she has mentioned that a couple of times earlier, that if you get a third dose, then that jumps up back to between 40 and 80% again. It also increases your protection against severe disease, which is also a key indicator, because with a 2 dose, after a few months, unfortunately, your protection against severe disease falls to approximately 60 to 70%. But if you get a third dose, it goes up to 90%, which is a big impact. It effectively reduces by 2/3 your risk of being hospitalized when you have a third dose as opposed to a second dose. So she said all of those things very clearly on Friday, but she had mentioned those things earlier as well. And obviously, she communicated those facts with us over time. Now, we are meeting very regularly, at least once a week. I do that obviously more often than that, to get the latest scientific evidence from her team and from experts outside of the government. Why wait to do that?
To change the definition.
Why wait
the question was, since you're saying third doses are the be-all, end-all right now, or at least the current answer, but you're not changing any definitions around what it means to be fully vaxxed. So I'm not understanding the
So what is clear now, and what public health experts, including outside of the government, have been saying for some time, and that's also true for many of them outside of Canada. I may come back to that in a moment. I don't want to spend too much time. But what has been said for many weeks and months, if you read through the media and expert reports, you'll see that it's been increasingly clear that the government of Canada should state clearly that an appropriate understanding of vaccination must be up-to-date vaccination. People should be up-to-date vaccinated. Fully vaccinated, according to health experts, including to Dr. Tam and PHAC, that's not strong enough now. So we need to transition to a new phase of fighting COVID-19 that comes with the strong recommendation that NACI made some weeks ago already, that people should be up to date in their vaccination status.
Okay, Abigail Binman, Global.
Minister Alghabra, your government has been consistently vague about specific benchmarks that would be needed to reach today's decision. I've heard a number of answers that give some general indicators, but I'm wondering what specific benchmarks got you here? And again, what benchmarks could we see in the fall that would cause you to bring these mandates back?
We've been clear about the benchmarks that got us to this point. First and foremost, the current situation, COVID situation at home. We are seeing improvement at our public health care system. We're seeing declining of COVID rates, and we have one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. We have data now that says a 2-dose is not doing what, given Omicron, is not doing what it did last fall. So there's been several indicators that we've relied on to get to this decision. And these indicators were examined in our conversations about what the next steps are. So these indicators informed our discussions, but we needed to look at what next. So given these indicators, what is our policy moving forward? What is our approach moving forward? And that's why we are offering now a comprehensive plan. Yes, we're adjusting our measures based as we have done in the past. I can go through a list of measures, by the way, that we've lifted over the last months, whether it's pre-departure tests, whether it's upon arrival tests, whether it's hotel quarantine, whether it's all kinds of other measures that have been lifted or adjusted, and we're doing today the same thing. We're adjusting based on improving or changing circumstances, but we are offering a vision for to comfort Canadians that we will continue to be vigilant. If circumstances change, we will react and we will be proactive in ensuring that we continue to protect the health and safety of Canadians.
But your point about offering a vision to comfort Canadians is sort of exactly what I'm talking about here. You're talking about lower cases, but is it X% of hospital beds that aren't full? You talk about high vaccination rates. That needle hasn't really moved recently. Is it a specific point? Like, what can Canadians take as, a hard statistic that helps them understand why they're gone today, not last month, and when they may come back?
Again, I'll ask Minister Duclos to add his own comments, but I'll tell you, while we're always looking for quantitative benchmarks, and quantitative benchmarks are helpful, but there are also qualitative benchmarks that we look at, including risk and risk factors. So those risk factors are a qualitative assessment based on the current situation, not only of the nature of the virus, not only on the nature of the transmission of the virus, but also what other risks are we contemplating. That's why it's very hard to just give hard quantitative benchmarks without leaving room for a qualitative assessment of the current situation. And we know that the current situation is going to change, hopefully to the better, but we need to be prepared if it changes to the worse. And yes, all of these factors, Abigail, you mentioned, are part of these examinations, but there are other risk factors that we have to take into account in cooperation and discussions with our partners at the provinces and the territories.
And perhaps, just if I can add something, Abigail, I think what my colleagues have said and what we've said from the beginning is that we have deliberately and consciously chosen to take a cautious approach. Some other people have advocated more reckless courses of action. Some people are looking for those magic numbers, as Omar said, where all of a sudden it goes away. But as Jean-Yves said, there are also some stark numbers that tell us that COVID has not gone away. So we are, as a national government, I talk to provincial and territorial governments all the time. Jean-Yves Duclos has meetings with his colleagues across the country. We're constantly evaluating our posture and seeing what we can do to ensure the best series of measures to protect Canadians. And as Omar said, they have evolved over time as the virus has evolved. So today is simply a continuation of a measured, cautious approach that we hope will allow Canadians, as the nice weather comes, as the summer months come, to perhaps be in a different posture. But we're not naive about what might happen in the fall. We hope very much that that is not the reality. But as we've said, if we get to a different circumstance in the fall or this winter, we will again not hesitate to take our responsibilities and to put in place a series of measures necessary to protect Canadians. And I think that's a fundamental difference from some of our political adversaries, and I think it's a fundamental difference that Canadians have come to respect and appreciate.
Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left and 4 people left on the list, unless the ministers are able to stay a couple minutes later. Mia Rabson, Canadian Press.
So you've said repeatedly that science was what was informing your decisions, but you have 6 months ago, the science said that 2 doses wasn't enough. 6 months ago, the science said that the vaccines that we had were not preventing infection. Why did it take 6 months for your government to move on vaccine mandates?
Well, let me say two things. A, we've been very successful until now, and I think it's important for Canadians to be proud of what they've done. B, we know, and we've been told by Dr. Tam and many other experts, that we need to transition. And that's what we're doing. We're transitioning because we want to continue being successful. And to continue being successful means that we need to transition to a third dose / up-to-date vaccination status for most Canadians. And that's what we're going to do in the next few weeks and months as we work with provinces and territories, because obviously they have many more levers to work with than we do at the federal level.
That doesn't answer the question, though, as to why it took 6 months when the science told you 6 months ago that the 2 doses wasn't enough. And many of your opponents have accused you of playing politics with this rather than science. You have not put the science on the table. What science has changed in the last few weeks that's different than what we knew in December that made you decide that now is the time to change this?
Well, one thing hasn't changed and one thing is changing. The thing that hasn't changed is what experts have told us for many weeks now, is that, and what Canadians understand, and most of them understand and have followed their advice, is that we need 3 doses to protect against infection, transmission, severe disease, long COVID, hospitalization, and death. What is changing now is our focus in the next few weeks and months to increase our rate of collective protection against COVID-19 through a significant effort in vaccinating Canadians with more boosters. So we will do that because we know the summertime is a season where, as Minister Leblanc said, now there will be a warmer temperature. If we listen to experts and base our understanding on what we've seen in the last 2 years, there will be lower cases, fewer hospitalizations. That's the right time for Canadians to not only to pause and deserve a summer of break, but also to think of how to better be prepared individually and collectively for the fall season.
But again, people are always looking for a magic date and a magic number. And if COVID has taught us one thing, there is no magic date where everything's suddenly resolved and every public health measure can disappear. And as my colleagues have said, the numbers that we're focused on are the numbers of Canadians that are in hospital today, including intensive care units, with COVID-19, and the number of people who've tragically died in Canada and around the world because of COVID. So if our political adversaries say that there's some political circumstance, I think, frankly, that would be the height of hypocrisy when our government has been prepared to take the difficult decisions, including taking the time necessary to arrive at the right cautious approach. We haven't been reckless, as some of our political adversaries have, in terms of making up scientific evidence or pointing to a whole series of factors that they say offers simplistic solutions. We have, as a government, and Omar said it very well, deliberately taken the time necessary to arrive at the right place based on the best medical and scientific advice that we can have in Canada and from partners around the world. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to do. So we've done it for over 2 years since COVID began, and we're going to continue to do it. So people shouldn't be surprised by that, and people shouldn't be surprised that we're not taking knee-jerk positions simply because some political adversary pretends there's a magic solution.
Okay, we're at the time that we were given. There are 3 people still on the list. Is there any possibility that you might be able to take 1 or 2 more questions, maybe 3? We're a lot less rowdy. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And this ends this press conference.